today with Mr. David Schaeffer, who is a World War II veteran. It's Monday, the 4th of November in 2013. Glad that you were able to come in today, sir, to be able to talk with us today.
My privilege.
You're originally from Carroll County?
Yes, I was born June 9th, 1920 in Baltimore at the hospital. My father and mother, my father was in the England Sponsor, or a firm in Westminster that had a flour mill, a grain elevator, and feed stores for all the farmers. So my grandfolks were farmers, and they are the sixth or seventh generation of farmers in Carroll County.
Wow.
Our ancestor settled here in the 1770s. He's buried in Kreider Cemetery, died 1800. His tombstone is inscribed in German.
Wow. Well, Kreider, I guess, is a German name.
Yeah, the German name is Schaeffer.
Schaeffer, yeah.
So anyway, I grew up in Westminster. Went to the public schools, and I don't know how detailed to get into this thing, but I did go to Mercersburg Academy my last 2 years of high school because my grandfather on my mother's side was a Reformed pastor who was instrumental in working with institutions of learning in Pennsylvania and Maryland.
Right.
So I got a working boy scholarship.
Oh, okay.
And then.
So you would have graduated from high school about 1938, I would imagine?
1937.
1937, okay.
There's only 11 grades at that time.
Oh, okay.
So that went into a problem I had later on. I'll tell you about that.
Right.
So they took us over to Gettysburg College in our senior year, and I liked the way it was set up and the fraternity set up. There was no co-eds at that time. So I was started there in the fall of 1937, joined the Sigma Chi fraternity, and entered at that time in the school, most schools, colleges had mandatory ROTC,
Right. Yes.
or phys ed if you had somebody didn't want to go in the ROTC. So the first 2 years of basic ROTC was mandatory. And in the 30s, it was Depression time, and there was an opportunity for me to go into the advanced ROTC program, which they paid you. So that's when I took the military training classes. And I must say that I don't know if I had a premonition or not, but the premonition came September 1st, 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland.
Poland, that's right, yes.
And I knew then we were going to be in a war at some point. So they were busy. In 1940, they mobilized the National Guard for a year's training, active duty training, and they started the rapid expansion of the military.
Right. So you would have graduated then, I guess, from Gettysburg College then in 1941.
That's right, in June 1941 at graduation. Now, they told us in our senior year, don't bother looking for a job. When you graduate, you're going to be commissioned and you'll get active duties orders at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as it happened, the graduation was a week before my birthday. So I wasn't 21 years old, so they couldn't give me my commission at graduation. So that's because I was in late grade school, 11 years.
Right.
So anyway, my orders and commission were mailed to me. So the orders, well, I was commissioned in the Quartermaster Corps. They needed officers and NCOs and everybody in all the branches.
Right.
But since I had been a business major in college, they put me in the Quartermaster Corps.
Funny how the Army works that way, right?
Yeah, but as it happened, I never served a year or a day in a quartermaster depot. I had other assignments. The first assignment was to report to Camp Lee, Virginia. They were building this recruit training center and to conduct basic training. Mm-hmm. So I was a platoon leader there right off the bat. And I was there at the time of Pearl Harbor, December 41, and right after that.
Even though you were on active duty and you'd been through ROTC, and you said, when Hitler invaded
I was commissioned as second lieutenant in the Army.
Everything, was that still a surprise for everybody, though, with Pearl Harbor? I mean, was everybody really totally shocked, or you guys had been kind of preparing? It
was a shock to a lot of people, because in the 30s there was a huge group of people that didn't want to go into any war, and the German Bunds formed, people with German ancestry that made that work.
Uh-huh.
So people were against going into war.
Right, yes.
So it took the act by the Japanese to really wake people up.
Tip the scale for, like
and
you
of
say,
course,
wake people up.
as soon as that happened, well, of course, that was a disaster. People couldn't understand how, that could happen, but it did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So people of military age, a lot of them flocked right to the recruitment centers to sign up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, as I say, I was transferred then in January of 42 to the 82nd Infantry Division at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana.
Louisiana, that's right, yeah.
Commanded by Omar Bradley, Major General, who became one of our foremost World War II commanders.
Right.
It was an infantry division at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a motor supply officer, or a platoon leader in the division. But then, let me refresh my memory here.
Just let me know. Mm-hmm.
In July 42, I was sent to the quartermaster school at Camp Lee for training. In August of 42, I was part of the cadre. They would take officers and NCOs from existing divisions to form a cadre for activation of new divisions.
Right, yes, because they were building all the divisions.
And I was one of the officers selected in that cadre to activate the 98th Infantry Division at Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky. Well, I was a senior quartermaster officer in that cadre, so I became the company commander of the 98th Quartermaster Company. So we trained during that winter, and in March of 1943, they tapped the 98th for another cadre, and I was made that member of that cadre.
Went to a new unit.
To activate the 63rd Infantry Division in Camp Landing, Florida. At that point, I was a senior again, and I was put on the staff of the division headquarters as a quartermaster supply officer, division quartermaster supply officer.
And what rank were you then? Were you a major?
I was a captain then.
Captain, okay. So you were a captain?
So we trained at Camp Landing in the 90-plus degrees, pine woods with the chiggers and everything.
You said that was March, so it was just warming up and everything. So March, April, May, June.
April, May, June. And then we found out that they didn't want us to stay there. They wanted to make room for another division. So they told the 63rd to move over to Camp Van Dorn in Mississippi. That was in August or September of '43. And that was happened to be just over the Louisiana state line, 50 miles north of Baton Rouge.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I was made assistant division quartermaster.
Okay.
Because I was a senior quartermaster officer's son.
And what was the primary task for the quartermaster when you formed those units and had everything brand new and everything? What would be your primary tasks that you would be doing?
Well,
forming those new
the
divisions?
quartermaster company and these infantry divisions, they were responsible for the food.
Okay. Primarily
That's
mess?
class one.
Right.
They were responsible for all clothing and clothing supplies.
Right.
They were also responsible for all the motor vehicles, the transportation,
Wow.
the fuel,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that all had to be provided
Right.
to support to the division.
Right.
And of course, each division then got a platoon of Graves Registration Company to
Right.
travel with them.
Right. That was under your jurisdiction.
Yes,
as far as
I was assisting the division quartermaster at
Right.
that time.
All right.
So we supplied the division with everything except the ammunition and the weapons. That came under ordnance.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And there was an ordnance company in the division.
Right.
Well, as it happened in October of 1943, the Officers Club had a dance, and we were able to get ladies and girls from Baton Rouge to come and help us at the Officers Club dance. And at that dance, I got behind a beautiful girl in a conga line, and I got smitten. I found out her name phone number and where she lived, and I dated her right away.
Uh-huh.
So that winter, every chance that I could get a pass over a weekend, I had a date with that young lady.
And what was the name of the camp again that you were in Louisiana?
Van Doren.
Van
Doren, and
Okay.
that was named after a Confederate general.
Right, okay, okay.
So it was very, it developed into the point where I didn't want to see anybody else, and I didn't want anybody else to see her. So
You knew that there was about 10,000 other young men down there. That
yes,
would
there
be
were,
knocking at
and
her
there
door.
was also an Air Force base in Baton Rouge.
Oh, okay.
So you got your flyboys in there. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, we were scheduled, of course, to go overseas.
Right.
The 63rd,
Uh-huh.
later in 43. But in June 44 rather,
Mm-hmm.
June 1944, orders came through transferring me as an individual from the 63rd to headquarters, 4th Army, Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Right out of a clear blue sky. When I got over there, I found out that I was to be part of the staff of the headquarters, 10th Army, newly activated for the sole purpose of invading Okinawa and the conquest afterwards.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
They told us we would be there a few weeks before heading west or heading overseas. So I called Bobby and asked her if she went. I told her we'd have a few weeks, and I asked her if she would marry me. And surprised, she said yes.
So you were married in about June of 44?
We were married on July 1st, 1944, First Baptist Church in Baton Rouge. Fortunately, I was able to get a 48-hour pass, and the transport officer there at Fort Sam Houston was able to get me a passage on a sleeper round trip that left Fort Sam Houston 11 o'clock Friday night, 500 miles east to Baton Rouge, get there the next morning at 8 o'clock Saturday. Were able to get the city office was open for me. You get the marriage license, and the doctor was there, giving me the Wasserman test required at that time. So the timing couldn't have been more perfect. By 11 o'clock, the wedding was over, the reception was over, and all of them, the guys and girls and people came down to the station to see us on the train going west.
So did Bobby join you on the train then, going back
yes,
to Fort Sam Houston?
Absolutely.
You didn't want to leave her there, right?
No. We had a few weeks for honeymoon.
Right.
So the funny thing happened. It was 11 o'clock at night, and everybody was making a lot of noise. They woke everybody up on the sleeper cars. At a point during the evening or the night, Bobby said, "Are we getting anywhere close to it yet?" I said, "No, we're just crossing the Mississippi." They had to break the train into half or less They barged the train across the Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
There was no bridge there at that time.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
So that took a while.
Yeah, yeah.
But we got into Fort Sam Hughes, San Antonio in time on Sunday evening for me to sign in.
Mm-hmm. You made it back in time.
Made it back in time.
Uh-huh.
So we couldn't have asked for a better honeymoon.
Yeah, that worked out well. Yeah.
It was they were organizing the 10th Army headquarters, recruiting NCOs and other officers, so we were getting organized.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the quartermaster, the headquarters 10th Army was commanded by Lieutenant General Simon Bolivar Buckner,
Right.
Jr.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was the former, he had been in the Alaska campaign till the Japs pulled out of there. So then he moved down there, and he was to be our commanding officer. The point was that we weren't told exactly where we were going, but we guessed what it was. So in August, we entrained to go west.
At that point, when, because June 6th, 44 was the invasion in Normandy, and you were doing all this building up, so was there anticipation that you would be going to Europe as opposed to going to the Pacific, or you knew all along that you were
I
going to
don't
be going
think so.
to-
No, I think it was we were going to go to the Pacific.
You knew that pretty much all the way along, that you were
Yeah,
going
we
to
were.
the Pacific.
The Pacific was divided into two theaters of operation. The central part was under Navy command, Central Admiral Nimitz.
Right. Mm-hmm.
General MacArthur had the Southwest Theater,
Right.
Australia, New Guinea, and so forth.
Philippines coming up, basically.
He
right.
was on its way north to liberate the Philippines.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So this was under Navy, but this was one of the first times that this was going to be a huge operation, joint divisions of Army and Marines. So that what they made the commanding unit an Army unit.
Right. Uh-huh.
Under us was a 24th Corps, Army Corps, with 3 Army divisions. And the Marines was a 3rd Amphibious Force with 3 divisions.
Mm-hmm.
That was to be it was over 100,000 personnel involved in that invasion.
Wow.
The L Day was going to be April 1st.
Mm-hmm.
April Fool's Day, and as it happened, Easter Sunday.
Now that was in 1940.
1945.
45, that's right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It took, with an operation that large, it took a lot of planning and coordination because they brought units from all over the Pacific, Hawaii, and even supply ships from the West Coast
West Coast and everything.
that were to come at different phases in the operation.
So you were in the headquarters, so I'd imagine that you were first. one of
Yes,
the
we
first
had to
elements that
coordinate
were-
all of that.
Right. And did you do most of that coordination from Fort Sam Houston or from somewhere in California or farther?
No, wherever the headquarters was.
Okay, okay.
So when we left Fort Sam, we went to Hawaii.
Okay, uh-huh.
And right there, of course, was Admiral Nimitz headquarters.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we were quartered at Schofield Barracks.
Schofield, I was going to do that at Fort Shafter, one of those.
For Schofield
Yeah,
Barracks.
Schofield Barracks, uh-huh.
But I was they divided the headquarters into 2 segments. One segment to be at the invasion site, and the other to come 30 days later,
Right.
close up at Hawaii. So I was on the command ship. It was a beautiful sunlit day, watching the boats going into shore. As it happened, the Japanese knew we were going to come. The Navy started shelling Okinawa 30 days beforehand for
Right.
the 16-inch guns from the battleships. The Japanese knew we were coming. They had 100,000 Japanese on the island. There would be no recruits, no reinforcements. They would be there till they died. So they let us land pretty much as we wanted at the narrow point of the island. It was only 2 miles wide. So the first day, or the second day, the forces had crossed to the other side. The first day, they were able to. The Japanese had some rear guard people. The first day we got control of the airfield, Kadena Airfield.
Right.
And the second day, the other airfield. So that the attack planes, or the wings that were the supporting the operation, could come in right in there right after we landed. Marines went to the north to get up, conquer that area, and the Army started the advance to the south. There's very few forces in the north, so it took the Marines not more than 2 or 3 weeks to mop it up. Hiroshima is where Ernie Pyle was killed by a Japanese bullet.
So you were on the island at the same time that Ernie Pyle was there?
Yeah.
Right. Had the headquarters moved off of ship and onto the land by then? Or were you still on board ship?
It was a matter of just about a week or a couple of weeks till they set up the command post on the island.
Okay.
You see, the Navy CB units came in there almost right away, and they are the ones that could set up all these forces, places.
Right.
So it wasn't too long till we were in and living under tents.
And this was this was April, May. So it was pretty warm by then. Summertime.
Yes.
Was it really
yes.
oppressively hot, or was it?
It's in a kind of a halfway between a tropic zone and a temperate zone.
Oh, okay. So right. Yeah.
So there's no problem about any winter uniforms or anything. But as it happened, Japanese had been preparing for our landing, and the southern part of the island was set up perfectly for their plan of operations. It was full of tunnels and connecting ravines and so forth. So they had their forces dug in. And the island is narrow all the way through, so that even though there were ravines, they had a island using crossfire everywhere you went. So that's made it difficult for any kind of action
Right.
from the other forces.
Now, at this point, when you went on to Okinawa, had you been promoted to major, lieutenant colonel by
I
then,
was
or?
I was promoted to major in the 63rd Division
Okay.
when I was an assistant division quartermaster.
Right. So that's when you were still at Sam Houston,
Yeah.
and then so you were a major all this time, all the way on to
Yes.
Okinawa.
as it happened, it took almost 2 months before they declared the island secured. It was a terrible problem. There was over 5,000 servicemen on Okinawa killed. They had to use this. They had to set up cemeteries for burials. Graves Registration did that.
Now, the grave registration, they came under your purview.
They're under quartermaster.
And quartermaster and everything. So you had to basically set up the cemeteries then.
That's
that were
right.
established there on the
I
island.
have to say this, that there was no way to use much of anything on the island, and everything had to be destroyed. The dwellings had to be burnt down. The vermin there would have been a terrible thing.
Oh, okay, okay.
That
was to cleanse everything, I guess, right?
Yeah.
To get rid of the disease and
And
vermin.
Naha, the capital, they had bombed that almost to nothing. The Japanese use their increment from your bodies to fertilize their gardens. So the vermin was everywhere there. So you had to get rid of all that. But one tragic thing that happened near the end of the campaign, it took actually the Marine divisions finished up on the north, and they had to come down and help the Army divisions because there were so many casualties. And there were some heights there, hills or so forth, that were you just had to get a formal frontal assault to get. And it was just terrible. But in June, General Buckner was on the front lines observing the action, and he took a shell into his chest and killed him. He was the highest ranking officer killed in World War II. The commanding general of the Marines took over for the headquarters. As it happened, General Joseph Stilwell, a four-star general, was on his way home from the China-Burma-India theater where he was commanding general for 3 years. He was relieved and returning home. They caught him in Honolulu when General Buckner was killed, and he was flown back to Okinawa and assumed command of the 10th Army headquarters.
Right.
So by that time we had gotten initial plans of for a coming invasion of the Japanese home islands.
Right.
So I was promoted to lieutenant colonel, and I was going to be involved with the Class 1 section of the quartermaster department. Luckily, Truman gave the word to drop the bombs, so the Japanese saw that they had no way to do anything else. They surrendered.
What was the feeling like with you and your staff and the people that were working with going into Okinawa and knowing all of that fighting that was going on, and then there was this bigger battle looming that was going to be the Japanese mainland? Was that kind of always in the back of your mind that
Not really.
we're going to have to go through this again, type thing?
Not until we finished the Okinawa
when you got
campaign.
that wrapped up.
And we got the orders, not the orders, but the initial plans.
And you were involved with that planning. Was it going to be 10th Army that was going to do the main
Well,
invasion
at that point, the first invasion was going to be November 1st on Honshu, the lowest Japanese island, and it was going to be handled by the 8th Army
Okay.
headquarters. That was part of MacArthur's group.
Right, okay.
And of course, by that time, MacArthur had landed on the Philippines with the 6th Army headquarters, and they had pretty well gotten that straightened out. I must say that on Okinawa, there were pockets of Japanese that did not surrender.
Right.
And it was even as late as 1946 and 47 before the security patrols got to the very last Japs.
There were some that
About
later-
half of them surrendered and the other half had to be killed
Wow.
because they'd run at you
Right,
with their weapons
really,
and you had to kill them.
right. They were fanatical, I
The
guess. in their,
fanatics, that's right.
Right, yeah. So anyway, I guess that there was probably a great relief then with the dropping of the 2 atomic bombs and the Japanese
Oh,
then
my,
subsequently
yes.
surrendering and everything.
Yeah, there was no question. We knew there were going to be umpteen casualties.
Right.
That was understood. So MacArthur took the surrender of the main force in Japan. Now that left all the Japanese forces stationed on the Ryukyu's islands that stretched from Honshu down to Formosa, now Taiwan. Okinawa was right in the center of that and the largest island in that group of islands. So headquarters 10th Army was given the assignment with 2 task forces, one to go to the islands north of Okinawa to accept the surrender of those Japanese forces, and another one to the south. I was made a member of the task force for the quartermaster grouping, for the quartermaster group. We sailed on an LST. But in the meantime, before that actually took place, the commanders of the southern Ryukyus and the northern Ryukyus were flown in by Air Force to Okinawa to surrender to the headquarters 10th Army.
Okay.
Those were the commanding officers of those groups. But we went to the islands north of Okinawa, and there's on the way at one of the islands, this was something that we saw. Our commanding officer in our task force was a full colonel. When he landed on the beach, a Japanese commander was there, and he stuck out his hand to shake the colonel's hand, and the colonel took it. And General Stilwell was on a plane flying over and saw it, and he relieved that commander immediately.
Wow. Oh.
Now,
They
when
could
we-
exchange salutes, but not necessarily shaking hands.
That's right. You
Right.
didn't even need to have to salute.
Oh, really?
They were vanquished.
Right.
So the quartermaster, I had some NCOs with us. We had to take inventory of all of the supplies on these islands. That meant the foods, which consisted of dry seaweed, rice, and some dried fish. That was their diet. So we had to make inventory of all that on each island. The ordnance people had to supervise the gathering of all ammunition and weapons load them on a boat, and take them out and dump them in the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, so they destroyed all the
Right.
fighting capability.
Now, on one of the islands, the Japanese took our quartermaster group up in the hills, and there was a burial plot with a cross and the name of a downed pilot
Oh, wow.
that had died, had crashed on the island, and the Japanese had buried him there and put the cross up for him. And they had, of course, his name and everything.
Great. Now, that was Japanese military that you were? Or was this Japanese civilians that you were?
No, this is
It
military.
was the military, okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Hmm.
So during that visit up the islands, it was at the time of one of the fiercest cyclones to come through there in a number of years, and it hit that northern part. And luckily, we were between close to two islands that had an inlet, protected inlet. So we were able to get in there, and the winds, well over hundreds of miles an hour, just pushed our flat-bottom boat right up on the beach. So we survived that. Unfortunately, the Navy that had ships patrolling up as far as 30, 40 miles offshore, they lost a lot of ships.
Wow. Huh?
The Navy took a beating on that cyclone. So there's a hue and cry when the Japanese surrendered. Everybody at home said, "Bring me back my boy." So how was they going to get everybody back as soon as everybody wanted them to?
Right, the war was over, so let's get everybody
So
home.
the military, they worked up a point system
Right.
for those that had served the longest and made the most points would be on the first ships going back. They utilized every ship of any description. Supply ships, if they had enough room for some passengers. Aircraft carriers, you could take a whole bunch on that. Well, I came back on an aircraft carrier.
So did your mission shift after you inventoried all of the
Yeah, you come back.
foods and everything? So then did you come back to Okinawa
Came back to
proper,
Okinawa.
and then started moving personnel back?
They,
Basically.
yeah, at that time, the civilian forces from the Department of Defense were already in control of the island. And so the 10th Army was deactivated
Oh, wow.
in
Okay.
October of 1945.
Right, okay.
We had a lot of officers. The headquarters 10th Army had a lot of high-rank officers, so they were put to sent to other assignments. So I had been on duty since June 1941, and I was fortunate to be one of the first to leave before Christmas.
So officer and enlisted had the same point system as far
Yes,
as rotation back
right,
and everything.
exactly.
Yeah.
So by that time, I had been a father for almost a year.
Oh, wow.
My baby girl was born back in late March of 45. Or April of 45.
Right.
So I had never seen her. So I was anxious to get back to
Right.
Baton Rouge.
So the unit was deactivated and everything, and then because you had the higher point system, you came back.
Right.
And where did you come back into? San Francisco or
Well, Los Angeles.
Los Angeles? Okay.
And
Right.
then
San Pedro?
and then we took the train back from Los Angeles
Right.
to Fort Sam Houston.
And how did you communicate with Bobby to tell her that you were coming on the way back? By telegram or by letter?
I've forgotten now.
How you,
I mean,
or did you just surprise her? Did you just show up at the front
oh
door?
no, because she met me.
Or did she meet you at the train station?
She met me at Fort Sam.
Right, yeah, okay.
So we got back together.
Right.
I was asked to accept a regular Army commission, but during the war, my dad was able to acquire a former lumber and material supply yard right across from his lumber business that had gone out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where was that?
in Westminster.
In Westminster, okay.
Yes, Lumber Cone Supply.
Uh-huh.
And I bought that in the hopes that his two boys, me and my brother,
Where was that in Westminster? In those
right
days?
across, it's right at the bridge,
Okay. Where
corner of Liberty and Green.
Liberty and Green. Oh, okay, okay. I know where you're talking about. Yeah.
So I had what has turned out to be a very fortunate way to go right to work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I didn't have to go through the GI because I already was a graduate.
Right, you already had college degree and everything.
So we came back to Westminster. At that time, there was no place to go. Luckily, my dad and mother took us in for a while, and right next door, my grandmother owned our house and the house next door, so she gave notice to the tenants so that Bobby and I and Diane could move right in.
Move in and everything. And where was that house?
52 and 54 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Pennsylvania Avenue. Okay.
Yeah, Irishtown.
Right. Oh, okay.
That's what it was known as in those days.
Wow, that's great.
So we were not able to do a whole lot, but as it turned out, it was best. During the war, everything was rationed.
Right.
And when we opened up the business, there were a lot of materials that were still rationed. We had no basis for having used them, so we couldn't buy them.
Mm-hmm.
Drywall was one of them. Luckily, a company was building a plant in Baltimore at that time. It took us about a year before we could buy drywall, but we could buy other things, and certain lumber products we could buy and certain others we couldn't.
Right. Was there a market for selling the lumber and everything after the war ended?
Well, as it turned out, we had all these guys coming back from the service.
Right.
Some were married, some were going to school, they were going to college, and they were coming out of college. They were going to have to find a place to live. They either got married or were going to get married, so housing had to be built. As it turned out, the Army, not the Army, but the government, were institutions accepting all these GI candidates, had to have a place for them to live.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So on Wymert Avenue, there was an area there. The government built quarters for young families or GI guys.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we were able to furnish some of those materials for those.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they're still there today.
Really?
They were supposed to be temporary, but they have been remodeled over the years.
little more than temporary if they've lasted about 70 years, I guess. Huh?
We got back to the States. Most of us signed up to go in the reserves,
Okay.
U.S. Army Reserves.
Right.
So when we got back to Maryland, of course, I was assigned to a reserve unit set up in Baltimore. And I served in that unit for the next 7 years.
Right.
We would attend meetings in Baltimore either once or twice, once a week or every other week. And we had well, we didn't have any no active duties. There was active duty for those that wanted to do it,
Right.
but I couldn't take time off in the summer because that was our busiest time
With the lumber business.
with our
and
lumber
everything.
business.
Right. Yeah.
And that was one reason why after the end of the Korean War, the reserve officers or reserve commissions were changed and required mandatory active duty. So at that time, it didn't look like there was going to be any more wars, so I didn't renew my commission.
Right. So you
I
resigned.
retired.
Retired from there.
Yes,
Yeah.
I retired my commission.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly the length and breadth of the career that you had, though. I mean, it stemmed the most dramatic time during the history of the United States, basically. With World War II.
Well, true. 1946, we came back. We joined the American Legion, and right after, I don't know exactly the year, Matthias Memorials put a big monument at the forks of the road, and that's when they started having annual Memorial Day parades.
Right.
Now, they've been observing Memorial Days for over 100 years, but in different ways.
Right.
So a lot of us reserve officers that came back, we didn't have a particular unit here, but we marched in the parade. And of course, we joined the Reserve Officers Association, the national unit. So we could go to other meetings of them. And I've been doing that ever since.
Right.
When I retired to Florida, I joined down there as a local unit. So I keep in touch with the military, so to speak.
Well, that's a great extent. Well, we appreciate you coming in today, Mr. Schaeffer. We really do. We're glad that you came in to record this and kind of give us a little bit of your history and everything, and we really appreciate your time.
It's over 70-some years now, and unfortunately, the history has to stop somewhere. The young folks don't get an idea what went on and what it's all about.
Right.
Except now they do, because we got involved again.
Right. That's true.
With the recent years, and unfortunately, there's no mandatory service. The drafting got stopped, I think, after the Vietnam War. So it's all voluntary, but it's a different kind of war.
Well, thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.